In this video, we are going to cover the next training cycle for our online training program, The Design. If you're not familiar with The Design, our design is comprised of 3 different training paths. A strength path designed to get you stronger, an engine path designed to improve your ability at cyclical stuff, and a CrossFit path that's designed to improve your ability to be competitive in the sport of CrossFit. So we're going to break that down. We're going to start with Dirty B over here talking about the engine path because he's in control of that in the next cycle.
Dirty B. That was so well done until you said Dirty B. Now I'm just shrinking over here.
You really did that well, except I don't want to be called that.
Why would you do this?
He's clean, baby.
I took a shower 2 days ago.
And he's an awesome dad.
Exactly. I can confirm he's dirty. I'm sitting next to him.
Yeah. You know what's funny? My shirt actually smells really bad. I was like, man, does Mike stink?
All right, in the next video, we're actually going to talk about the training paths.
So we're switching up the paths, or switching up the coaches who are riding the paths. I'm going to the engine path, which means you guys are going to have some fun tests. Max, last cycle you basically cut out the C2 bike and the ski erg. Yeah. So I'm going to add those back in, but they're not going to be part of the actual test that we do. So for those that are doing the engine path, some people ask for the C2 bike and the ski erg to be back into the training plan. So the way that I'm going to format that, basically those will be kind of layered in every other week. So for those that have them, they're touching them and getting some exposure, especially those that are trying to do online qualifiers, because you may start seeing those, or those that are trying to prep for actual or in-person events, just because you're going to see those. Definitely, you see the ski erg a lot, now the C2 bike.
Yeah, I had a bunch of sanctional people ask me about that specifically. They're like, well, I want to get volume on these movements. Should I be doing them or subbing out when there's rowing 3 times a week? So it's good that you put it back in.
So we'll layer it in, but then what I would like to do with that is give people options. So if it's like ski erg, hey, if you don't have a ski erg, here's the options, so people aren't asking or trying to figure out how to modify each of those days. So that's kind of the first thing, because I know people are asking for that. We're going to do 3 tests over the next 8 weeks. We're going to start with those tests. We'll train for them, but layered in with some other stuff, and then we'll retest some of those at the end. And then Max, like you did before, you said, hey, these are going to be kind of like the tests that we use every time I write the engine path. We'll use one of these as a test that we'll do every time I write the engine path, and I'll talk about that in a second. So those 3 tests. The first one's going to be 5 rounds for time, 1,000 meter or 850 meter assault bike.
I don't like it already.
Assault bike, that's just the meters on the assault bike, and then a 500 meter row.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
So back and forth for 5 total rounds. That's test number 1.
Okay, that sounds okay.
That sounds better, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The second test is going to be, Max was doing 800 meter runs or intervals and 200 meter intervals in the last path. You wrote in some longer running. So I wanted to do something that's kind of in between those 2 things, between really 800 and 200, and make it hurt. So it's 4 sets. Each of these is going to be for time. 400 meter run at 100% effort. Rest 3 minutes between each of those sets. Your score is going to be the total time of those 4 sets. Ooh. So my first one's 1 minute, then 110, then 120, then 130. I'd add those together, and then that's my score. We'll do some high power running work. I think that this actually translates better into the sport as far as like actual performance metrics, because we see, I don't know what it's called. Was it Naughty Nancy, Nasty Nancy, 500 meter run into the overhead squat, or 6 rounds for time, a 400 meter run, 20 thrusters, like these workouts that we see in CrossFit competitions. The tendency is for people to run it like slower than their 5K pace, and they just can't go any faster no matter what the distance is. So what we want to do is try to get people a little bit more powerful to where, hey, my 5K, maybe I'm running at a 2-minute 400 split, but if it's 4 rounds for time, I can go at a 135 or 140 split and then keep pulling that down as fast as you
Did you say 4 rounds or 3 rounds?
4 total
so
sets.
So broken mile, basically.
Yeah, it's a broken mile.
I did that test as 200s in the last training cycle.
Yeah.
So
that
it'll be interesting
gross.
to see 400s.
Yeah, a little bit different. Obviously, you can probably go a little faster with 200s, but that 400 is usually what's tested most in the sport.
Let's just take a moment here.
I thought the same thing. I just missed my lift, and Mike's still hitting snatches. I'm like, I hope no one comments.
So I didn't want to cut off.
So really, what was going on is you guys didn't pay any attention to me.
I didn't hear shit that you said.
Mike's watching himself over here.
I saw Mike just smirking.
Did you hit this?
I think, yeah.
Let's
see.
I saw
I don't know. Let's wait and see.
Yeah.
Success.
Can we stop paying attention?
Okay. So then the last test, I wanted to, the engine path has kind of historically been about the machines, right? And it's still going to be that. I wanted to leave the burpee, especially as we kind of turn the corner towards the open, burpees, double unders, those other body weight box jumps, movements that you see will be in the CrossFit path. but I was thinking about ways, how can I integrate some of the feelings that you get in a CrossFit Metcon into the engine path without actually, stop looking at your snatches, dude.
He just failed twice, though,
I know,
so it's okay.
He's looking past me. But how can we integrate some of that feel that you get in a Metcon, like a 19.1 with rowing and wall balls, or other variations, maybe thruster and rowing like 15.5. So how this one will work, it's going to be 6 rounds, and it's continuous clock. 30-second wall sit at parallel with a 20-pound ball for the men, 14-pound ball for the ladies. You're hugging it the entire time, pressing it into your chest.
I like hugging.
15-second transition, 1 minute max cal row. 15-second transition back to the wall sit for 6 total rounds.
Yeah.
The way that this one's going to be scored is your highest and lowest calorie rounds will be the score. You're adding those two together.
Got it.
So the idea then is, one, you have to learn how to be sustainable. You can't have a huge drop off, or if you do, you're just not going to do well in the workout. And the other thing is, if you have to total your highest and your lowest, you also need to be powerful enough to get the cals, needed to be at the top of the leaderboard.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting game to
Yeah.
play, like how to strategize that and when to try to get your highest round.
Right. I think that, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I like that too, because I think it's important to have tests that are really low barrier to entry movements, because what we've seen in the open sometimes is when you have movements that are really simple, anyone in the world can do really well at it, and it really skews the data on the field. So I think we need to keep touches on that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like just pure body weight stuff and just going.
Right. One of the tendencies that I found just going through the data on rowing workouts, most people, again, are good if it's just like, hey, you just go at your kind of average slow pace for 30 minutes now or 45 minutes, because people are doing some easy work, or they've seen the 60-minute rows, so they want to do that. But when you talk about going into a 19.1 or 15.5, males and females have a hard time holding the requisite cals per hour that they need to be in the top 100, top 50, top 1,000, whatever your goal is. So we know that, let's say for men, 1,500 cals per hour is kind of like that target for that 10 to 15-minute workout. Well, this is going to give those people an opportunity to kind of express that power. And if you're not good at it, you're going to be doing training each week that says, hey, for the males, if you want to be top 100, I'm going to say you need to hold 1,500 cals per hour faster for this minute. For top 1,000, you need to be holding 1,400 plus. And then it'll give you some target ranges. And the same thing I'll do for the females. But what it'll allow us to do, instead of it just being, I'm just going to hold whatever hurts for me, you'll have target paces to say, this is what you need to be able to hold if you want to be in that zone for whatever the workout is.
Yeah.
Nice.
So those are the 3 workouts. The rest of the week's going to basically be some easy work. We're going to do some longer rowing, so we'll add an extra day of rowing just because in the open, it's probably going to be a row test, right? It's not going to be a bike or a run test. With that said, we'll also add another day of mixed running, and that will be the day that we do C2 bike and ski erg. So it's kind of going to alternate from week to week. But we're basically going to touch all of the machines with the focus on those 3 tests.
Cool. We just both said cool at the same time.
Double cool.
All right, so
Not cool anymore.
CrossFit will go last. So for
Yeah.
the strength path, I think the biggest change is that we're trying to find a little bit more integration between the CrossFit and the strength path. We found that there are a lot of people out there that want to compete at CrossFit, but also need to get stronger. And when we have a full strength program written and then a CrossFit program that has some of the strength capacity work in it, people are having a hard time figuring out what they should do from the strength path and the CrossFit path. So we created templates on Sunday to try to correct that, where we put out a template that explains like a strength bias version of the training program. But we want to try to upgrade that even farther. And now when I write the strength program, I'm essentially writing it that within the strength program, you're going to have 2 options for some of the strength development work, specifically with the barbell. So I thought, okay, we're in the last training cycle that we have before open prep. When we get into open prep, all the gymnastics is going to be super high volume kipping, super high volume muscle up, super high volume chest to bars, toes to bar, just all the stuff that we have to do. So I was thinking that this cycle, if we're going back 1, that I could put a little bit more work into just strict isometric gymnastics, end range, core strength and development. So I'm going to take some gymnastics bodies progression and just some higher time under tension isometrics for my gymnastics focus, with just some basic strength tests like a weighted pull-up, a 3RM weighted pull-up. So that way there's some contractile strength, but it's more isometric strength that we're developing there. And then I'm going to have the barbell split up into 1RM development. So for the snatch, for example, on Mondays, there will be 2 progressions, and it'll tell you in the exercise notes, you're either doing A or B for your snatch. In A, we'll have progressions that are guided towards improving your 1RM snatch. And in B, we'll have progressions that are designed to improve your 6RM snatch, where your 6RM has to be completed within 40 seconds.
Yeah.
So that way, we have a very clear delineation between people that are trying to improve their 1RMs,
Yep.
and then people like you that might not necessarily need to, like we just watched you hit 285 on the snatch. You don't need to improve that right now. You need to improve your cycling capabilities.
Yeah, I always go back to like 19.2 as an example of that, and you've made a really good video on YouTube that talks about the differences in that. But yeah, for sure, like I would need more focus on cycling that 275 under fatigue so I can get to that final round, and then you have someone else that just like needs to get the 1RM up so they can actually complete the 275, you know, at least for a few reps or whatever to get to that heavier round.
It would be a perfect example is you and I, right?
Yeah.
Like, so you would be doing the 6RM or doing some more barbell cycling focused work. If I was really wanting to compete, I would say, Max, I need to be doing the 1RM stuff, so give me more of that. And
Yeah.
to just be clear, those are options that you should be following one, not both.
Yes, for sure. There's always going to be some barbell cycling stuff in the CrossFit path, but it's
Yeah.
not necessarily strength oriented when you're doing like
Yep.
10 rounds for time of 10 power snatches at 95 pounds and 10 burpees. It's just going to be a different stimulus than doing stuff in the 70+% of your 1RM for capacity.
Yep.
So I felt like that would be a good separation for the Olympic lifting, and then for the slower lifting, that stuff is going to stay the same for everyone. So we're going to be working on a 5RM front squat, a 5RM pause strict press, and a 5RM pause bench press. So we went through bench press and strict press progressions with when Brandon was writing a cycle.
Yep.
And I think that was super valuable for a lot of people. I think it translated well to burpee speed from the bench press, ring dips, lockout from muscle ups,
Yeah.
handstand push-up capacity. Just I think a lot of people develop confidence in developing their pressing.
Yeah.
And I wanted to bring that back, but there's not that many things that you can do with improving a strict press and a bench press. So I
Yeah.
thought that the pause might just be a good way to allow me to build some progressions without doing the same progressions that people that were in the strength path,
Yep.
that was 12 weeks
Yeah.
ago. They would
Yeah.
just finish those progressions.
In the current strength path, we've been just maintaining it a little bit. So I write some type of horizontal pressing once a week, whether even if it's gymnastics focused on the rings or dumbbells, really. But yeah, I think it'd be good to get back on a pressing cycle.
And by the way, doing pause bench press or pause strict, if people haven't done them before, it
Yeah.
is so much harder.
So humbling.
It
Yes.
does expose
Yeah.
you, so it's definitely a good thing to add in.
Yeah, so I think just improving starting strength there. And then for the power lifts, basically deadlift and back squat, the other power lifts, I'm going to alternate those on Friday. Just pick one to be the heavy one and one to just be lighter and capacity driven, and alternate those back and forth. And then the CrossFit path will kind of be built around that strength work to make sure that there's not so much conflict that people are trying to do the strength path and the CrossFit path, and then they're getting beat up and they're not getting stronger because they're doing too much volume,
Yep.
and their CrossFit is dampened because they're doing too much strength work. So we're just going to try to do a better job of layering those two programs together.
And I think it's a great way to lead into the open prep, which is coming. I mean, it'll be here before we know it, right? At the end of the year, we're going to be talking about that. And so this will give us an opportunity to kind of start blending those paths, because everyone that's doing the open needs to be focused on open prep when we get there.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the strength will, for almost everybody, turn into lifting under
Right.
fatigue, strength capacity. There's just not that much need for pure 1RM work when you're talking about being 8 weeks out from the open. So
Yeah.
this is kind of the last opportunity for people that want to get stronger to do some of that pure strength work, and an opportunity for those that know they need to do capacity work to still have an option to do that.
Yeah, I definitely think it'd be a good way to start segueing out of doing 12 weeks of straight strength work, like I was talking about earlier, to now having a good mix of it and options so they can get some like the endurance barbell cycling work in. So I'm excited to see that.
All right, so that's it. That's my strength path. That's my spiel. Now you
Talk to us.
Yeah.
For anybody that didn't see the last cycle video, Mike basically had a raspberry neck cinch.
Cherry.
So we're gonna try to cut him off if we realize that he's
Hold
not
your breath
breathing.
the whole time.
All right, my goal is to blow the candle out while talking. All right, so let me try and organize my thoughts here because we've got a lot coming up with the CrossFit path. So the main overall goal of this I guess the training peak for this CrossFit cycle is preparing for a competition that's coming up in the middle of December. Okay.
What is that competition?
Well, we don't have a name set in stone yet, but the Winter Classic is something that just keeps getting thrown out. So kind of
Betwixt Classic.
the Betwixt,
The middle of December Classic.
the mid-December Classic rolls off the tongue very nicely.
Yeah, everyone's going to want to sign up.
So we had a great turnout online with competitors with the Quarantine Classic, and we thought, man, it'd be really fun to basically use the training paths again to kind of all build together towards something as a community builder and have another competition leading into the holidays. Because what we've seen in the past with running the design now for over a year is you get into the holidays, and as much as we want to keep training structure and progressions going, like people just kind of dwindle off through the holidays. They get tired. They got a lot of family stuff going on. So we're just not going to fight it. We're still going to have training, but we're going to try and peak for a competition that is around 18th and 19th of December on the weekend. It'll be 2 days long, Friday and Saturday. And then we're going to kind of deload in through the holidays. So that's going to be the timeline leading up to this. So starting week 1 of this cycle, some of the changes that you'll see in the CrossFit path are that 1 day a week, we're going to try and get in an engine workout. So it's going to be the same day as the engine path, so we can have a little bit more like cohesiveness with all the training paths together. The strength work, like you were talking about, will be written from the strength path, but it will be in the CrossFit path. So I'll have some days where I'm like, go do part A of, the strength path that's written, and then maybe I'll make a change to part B. But most of the progressions, the strength progressions that you'll see in the CrossFit path this go around are going to be from the strength path. And then the rest of the CrossFit work through the week is going to be more training focused. So we just pretty much hit a really hard testing phase, 5 open workouts over the course of 2 weeks. So we're going to pull back on open testing for a little bit just to make sure we have some breathing room and retraining again. It's a good opportunity to see what your weaknesses were and like the specifics that you need to work on for the next 8 to 9 weeks before we start the open prep, because when that open prep hits, we're going to go right back into like hard testing again. So you'll be doing way more Metcons. So the throwdown will be like the main Metcon of the week. We'll still have testers and stuff through the week, but it's not going to be like full-blown open workouts. It's going to be just little elements to make sure that we are continuing the progressions that you built on the last CrossFit cycle.
So it would be like EMOMs, intervals. It's stuff that's still giving us all open touches and speed and reps and volume and practice, but not necessarily like slam your head into the wall Metcon.
Exactly. So an example of some progressions I've written are like some gymnastics density into barbell cycling work. So it might be like 50 toe to bar for time, rest 1 minute, and then go into an EMOM of touch and go power clean and jerks.
Nice.
Where we kind of progress on that. Maybe the weight goes up or the reps go up, whatever. Or an AMRAP of like high turnover burpees and chest to bars going into barbell cycling. So just getting, again, like taking some of the common elements and patterns that we see in all these open workouts and just constantly building on them and progressing them. Another thing that we'll continue to focus on is making sure that we're still getting skill work on the movements that weren't hit with intensity that day. So for example, if we did a bunch of like hard burpees and barbell cycling, maybe we're going to do some double under technical work at the end of the session just to make sure you're actually improving the skill, right? Like we know that doing them in Metcons over and over does allow you to get better over time, but for those of you that are in this path and you're trying to be better at the sport, eventually you hit a ceiling when you just do things in a testing environment all the time. So we do need to make sure that we're constantly revisiting little skill touches on things, like making sure we're working on hand position, making sure we're working on cleaning up the bound in your double under jump. Because just doing sets of 400, 500 in Metcons all the time, like just kind of will continue to train bad patterns if you're not spending the time to work on those things. So,
I've also noticed, sorry to cut you off,
You're
with specifically regards to double unders, give you some time to think. If people are doing them in Metcons all the time and they're not as skilled or not as fit, so myself, for example, with double unders, if I do a Metcon, it's a 10-minute AMRAP and there's sets of 50 double unders, my total volume of that, even if I felt super confident with my positions and my technique, which I don't, but if I did, I'm still accumulating far less volume than somebody who's really proficient and really fit at the skill. So the skill work allows you to build a lot more reps and a lot more confidence, so that way when you do go into testers, you can get deeper in and maybe make more out of those Metcons instead of having your fitness limit your ability to develop that skill. So I really like that, especially now because we're kind of like pre-season, off-season type time.
I think that's true with all of these movements, especially the open style movements where there are skill limitations for some people. And so doing this training, kind of going through a training block where it's more focused on that, allows people to then look at, you'll see the week and say, hey, there's muscle up skill work. That's something I definitely need to do because I'm only able to do sets of 2 or 3 or whatever it may be, or double under. So I would encourage people that, I think the tendency is sometimes people just want to do the metcons, but the skill work is just as, if not more important for us right now to build the base that we need going into the open prep cycle.
Yeah, I mean, you have to, right? Because how do we progress it from here, you know?
Right.
So, like, if we went ahead and just jumped right back into just pounding the volume and reps with the movements that you still need touches on or development with, we hit open prep. How do you progress from that? You know, you don't do it even more, like you do it even harder. Yeah, so we're basically training right now to raise the ceiling so that come time for the open prep, you can really drop the hammer and just focus on like execution, volume, preparation, and just like speed of movement overall.
Yeah,
so,
I like it, looking at it that way, raising the ceiling. You're trying to increase your potential so that when it is time to do all the CrossFit stuff, you're able to do more.
Yeah, so the weekly structure will vary, right? It's CrossFit. Like, I'm going to look at the strength progressions. I'm going to look at the engine workout that I feel like goes in line with what we're trying to get out of the week, as well as the throwdown. And those days will kind of mix and match and vary, right? I also think, too, like, there needs to be a lot of like with CrossFit and trying to get better at the sport, like we can't be too structured with a set timeline because I think it just makes you unadaptable. Is that a word? Unadaptable?
Yeah,
it's okay.
Non-adaptive.
I think you know what I mean.
Yeah, we'll count it.
Yeah, so anyways, point being is like trying to basically make sure we are progressing at the common patterns we know while also maintaining a good touch of CrossFit, which is just being prepared for unknown things. So I will have like those patterns that I will make sure they show up every 10 days, like thruster pull-up combos. We see those all the time. Like we got to keep doing those just based on history, excuse me. But then also making sure we do odd object type stuff or even body weight elements, because I don't like to try and guess what might come out in the open, but I look at what would really trash this community if we look back at what we've trained and things they're not prepared for relative to the rest of the world. So going back to like a 19.1, for example, that threw everyone that was a competitor, like it kind of screwed them in a way because it was a workout in like a class global group setting that was super simple to do. And I don't think that they were prepared to go and move at that speed with simple movements. So even having just basic gymnastics AMRAPs, like what happens if strict pull-ups and pistols comes out for 15 minutes, or not even pistols, strict pull-ups, push-ups, and air squats.
It's
a level playing field in the world, regardless of how good you are at complex CrossFit movements. So
and being heavily muscled and well trained in the sport could actually be a detriment to that. If somebody's just like a class warrior that does boot camps, which isn't a bad thing, but if they do, then you now take that whole population of people and say, all right, well now they're competitive for this one workout, and their scores on the other workouts don't matter because that'll affect you on the leaderboard.
Yeah, not to spend too much time on that concept, but I mean, again, like I'm not trying to guess what will come out, but those are like some hazard control movements and types of workouts that we can do just to make sure that you are maintaining some touches on it. And I think the gymnastics strength progressions that you were talking about will really help with that. Like, imagine if an L-sit came out in the world. You know, like, doesn't matter your snatch. Like,
well, I've also, part of my reasoning for putting this in is that I've been using gymnastics bodies progressions for 8 years, but I've never actually followed the progressions as they're written in terms of the amount of volume because there was always other stuff throughout the week that I wanted to do. But about a month or 5 weeks ago, I decided I'm going to follow the progressions as written, and doing, you know, for example, 5 minutes of hollow body rocks with a integrated mobility piece back and forth and accumulating that amount of core work has already in a short period of time translated into my ability to maintain a tighter body line when I'm doing kipping work. So I notice that there's differences when I do burpees, when I do muscle ups, and I'm guessing that most people would have, unless you have a gymnastics background, would have some sort of a weakness in that area and core stability issues. So I think it will translate to being able to be stronger in lifting, because if you're doing a front squat, transferring force from the lower body into the bar will require a stiff midline, but also in gymnastics. So I think it'll be a good way to kind of get after an underlying strength stuff, and then maybe also cover our ass if somebody decides to do a freestanding handstand or an L-sit or something like that in the open.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, that's pretty much it. I kind of want to drop a little teaser on the Winter Classic competition. So the format will be 2 days. Again, it starts on Friday. It'll be built around what the training has been with all 3 paths. So we want to get everyone that's doing, you know, any of the paths involved in the competition. If you're just doing the strength path or just doing the engine path, there will still be an opportunity for you to just do that test. So like if you're just like, I'm not doing CrossFit right now, it's fine. We'll have a way to score that for you. However, I like the idea that we have of it being basically one really tough, challenging long test on Friday with a combination of all 3. So stay tuned for that.
So that's going to be December 18th and 19th.
Yeah.
And we're going to start this cycle.
Hold on, you didn't mention that it was 2 day. So Saturday.
Oh yeah, the second day is the throwdown.
Second day will be the throwdown. Yep.
Yeah. So that will be the final 2 days of the cycle, though? Or are we moving into something else?
No. That's kind of like
That's the last hurrah of this
That's
training
the
cycle.
peak of the training cycle,
Yep.
and then we'll go into that cycle will continue basically leading to the first of the year.
Yeah.
The first of the year will start the next training cycle leading into open prep. So
Right.
we're, again, like talking about like the holidays and travel, we'll still have training written, but it's going to be a bit of a deload, just basically preparing you to come down from the hard comp that we did and the previous training cycle, going in and getting ready for the new year.
Yeah, so we'll probably put our next video out that kind of explains that 2-week transition period into the next cycle, and it'll be like either a deload or a body weight centric style training. And I like that because I feel like one of the most unenjoyable aspects of the holidays is me having training written and, you know, either being with family or not having my food dialed in and
hard.
missing training and then beating myself up mentally for doing it. So I like the idea of it being something that everybody can do everywhere, lesser volume, where you can get it done and feel good about getting it done, but not feel like you're needing to be at like your most precise and dialed in capabilities.
Everybody wants to work out too, so they can just eat whatever they want. And I'm like, you know what? Fine, fuel up because we're about to drop the hammer on you.
So this cycle starts the first week in November. It'll go through the end, basically the end of December, and then that's when we'll drop another video talking about our open prep cycle.
Yes, sir.
Go to trainingthinktank.com/DSGN. Come join us. Train with Mike, train with Brandon, train with me. That's it.
Yeah.
Get better at the sport of CrossFit alongside some of the best athletes in the world in our online training program, The Design. Head over to our website, trainingthinktank.com/DSGN to learn more.